Hey there world, friendly internet DM Devious here. I'm back home for break right now and don't have a lot of my filming equipment with me, so I apologize if the video looks a little weird, but making do with what I have. Also, I apologize for this video being a little late, but as I said, I am on break, so I decided to take the week off. Well, without further ado, this is The Beginner's Guide to D&D 3.5. We're moving right along in our discussion of the classes, and now we're talking about our mages, wizards, and sorcerers. Although we need to start with a bit of intro to magic. In order to talk about mages, we need to talk about how magic works in D&D. A few of the aspects of spellcasting we need to discuss apply to all classes that cast spells, so we'll go over them first. In order to cast magic in D&D, characters have to cast spells. Each spell in D&D is unique and specific, having well-defined effects and specific uses. All spells in D&D are divided into tiers called spell levels. It's not the same as the character level. It's a little confusing, but you need to not mix them up because that will make it much more confusing later. Spell levels in D&D range from 0 to 9, spells of level 0 being the least powerful and spells of level 9 being the most powerful. Casters in D&D also have a finite number of spells they can cast per day, which are called spell slots. You get a specific number of spell slots of certain levels, each spell slot being able to hold a cast of a spell of equal or lower level. So basically, if you have a level 1 spell slot, it can hold a level 1 spell or a level 0 spell. In order to refresh their used spell slots, all casters must rest for 8 hours, usually done by sleeping. I know that was a lot of information, but we're going to have to go through a little more, so just stay with me. There are two types of spellcasters in D&D, arcane spellcasters and divine spellcasters. All mages are arcane spellcasters, so that's what we're going to go over right now. Arcane spellcasters are defined as directly manipulating magic energies in order to cast spells. The only eccentricity of arcane spellcasters we need to know right now is that they have a difficulty wearing armor. All spells that require the ability to move in order to cast have a chance to fail if the caster is wearing any sort of armor or has a shield. So basically, sorcerers and wizards don't like to wear armor at all. Alright, that's it for the crash course, so let's move on to wizards. It's safe to say that wizards are sort of the nerds of the magic world. Their power comes from intensive study. Magic for them is a carefully honed skill based off of years of training and schooling. Basically, every wizard is an academic of some variety. As such, wizards tend towards being lawful, as discipline is valued in such a path, although that doesn't mean they must be lawful or even that they can't be chaotic. If wizards worship any deity, they tend to worship Bakub, the god of magic, with many evil wizards preferring Ouijas or Nerul. In general, studying is far more important to a wizard than worship. When it comes to what races tend to be wizards, you're most likely going to find wizards among humans, elves, and half-elves, with gnomes also being common, but gnomes are a bit of a special breed. Basically, when a gnome is a wizard, they tend to focus on illusion magic, and thus tend to call themselves illusionists, although they are still wizards. Races other than these taking to wizardry is rare. Okay, let's get into the gameplay. A well-played, well-thought-out wizard is one of the most powerful characters in the game, and a prepared wizard is a force to be reckoned with. However, a wizard taken by surprise is incredibly vulnerable. This is why, in my opinion, the wizard is one of the hardest classes to play, but also one of the most rewarding. So, important ability scores. The most important for a wizard, bar none, is intelligence. It determines how powerful of spells a wizard can cast, how many spells they can cast, and how difficult their spells are for others to overcome. Dexterity always helps because of the armor class bonus. As I mentioned earlier, a wizard wearing armor is inadvisable. And a high constitution can help a wizard's normally low hit points. Speaking of low hit points, the hit die for a wizard is the D4. The lowest hit die in the game. Wizards also have few proficiencies, being proficient with the club, dagger, crossbows, and quarterstaff, and no armor or shields. So, skills. Wizards effectively have 6 class skills, those being concentration, craft, decipher script, knowledge, profession, and spellcraft. I say effectively because craft, knowledge, and profession all have specific skills for different varieties that have to be taken individually, but the educated wizard is able to learn any of them. Wizards get a number of skill points per level equal to 2 plus their intelligence modifier, and as always start at level 1 with 4 times that number. The base attack bonus of the wizard is poor, as physical combat is not their forte, and they have poor fortitude and reflex saves, but a good will save. Now we're going to talk about the unique features of the wizard. First, spells. Wizards gain access to a new spell level every odd level, starting at level 1 with access to first level spells, gaining second level spells at level 3, and so on. However, in order to be capable of learning and casting those spells, the wizard must also have an intelligence score of at least 10 plus the spell level. So, For that level 3 wizard to be able to learn second level spells, they also must have an intelligence score of at least 12. The number of spells a wizard can cast per day is also defined by their character level and intelligence score. The spells per day section of the wizard's class table shows how many spell slots of each level a wizard of a certain class level gets per day, and a wizard also gets some bonus spell slots based on their intelligence modifier. Hey guys, Editing Deves here. Last time I explained this, it was explained pretty poorly, so just use this table. You can find it on the internet and in the front of the player's handbook. Also, in order for a wizard to be able to use those bonus spell slots, they must first have access to spells of that level. A wizard with a bonus 3rd level spell slot can't use it until they gain access to 3rd level spells. Now we get to something very unique about wizards, which is the way they prepare spells. A wizard prepares spells every day by studying their spellbook. A wizard's spellbook is their most valued possession, containing all of the spells they know how to cast, and every day after their 8-hour rest, a wizard studies their spellbook for an hour, choosing which specific spells to place in their spell slots and finalizing their list of spells for that day. While a wizard can cast spells without their spellbook, they can't prepare new ones for the day without it, making it vital to their success. There is one exception to this rule, which is the spell Read Magic, as wizards can prepare Read Magic without a spellbook. Wizards gain new spells in 2 different ways. First of all, every time they level up, they gain an additional 2 spells of any level that they currently know. So, a wizard who knows up to 3rd level spells can choose to get 1 1st level spell and 1 2nd level spell, or 1 1st level spell and 1 3rd level spell, or 2 3rd level spells, or whatever. The other way that wizards get new spells is by copying them into their spellbooks. This is the primary way that wizards get new spells, meaning that the amount of spells a wizard knows is basically independent of their level, depending purely on what spells they have written in their spellbooks. Wizards automatically start with all 0th level spells in their spellbook, as well as 3 1st level spells of their choice. Moving away from the minutiae of spellcasting, wizards are the first class we've discussed that have a specific bonus language, that being Draconic. Draconic is like Magic's Latin in D&D, with many ancient magical texts being written in Draconic, so many wizards learn it as a part of their education. Wizards can also have familiars, but I'm going to explain how familiars work after I finished explaining sorcerers as well, since both of them can have them. All wizards start with Scribe Scroll as a bonus feat, allowing them to spend gold and experience to create scrolls imbued with a known spell. Also, at every 5th level, wizards gain a bonus feat, which they are allowed to pick from Metamagic feats, item creation feats, or spell mastery. This is in addition to the regular feats they gain from leveling up. I know I've said to wait for a further explanation on feats a lot, but trust me, that is coming. Wizards also have the choice to specialize in a given school of magic, although they must make this choice at level 1. A wizard with a specialization can cast extra spells from their specialized schools of magic and have an easier time learning spells from that school, but in return, they must give up spells of 2 other schools. I know it's irritating to hear, but more on schools of magic in a later video. I have to cut some content, otherwise we'd be here forever. Okay, that wraps us up for talking about wizards. Let's move on to sorcerers. The sorcerer gets their power in a much different way from wizards. Where wizards study and hone their art, the power of a sorcerer is inborn, being a natural gift that they hone with practice. Magic for a sorcerer is intuitive, unlike the educated and rehearsed nature of wizards. They tend towards chaos and alignment, but aren't restricted by it, and their religious habits run the gamut. As for what races can be a sorcerer, being a sorcerer depends more on that innate power than the individual's race. Why or how they have it can have any number of explanations. All that's important is that they have that potential in the first place. Let's move on to the gameplay side of sorcerers. The most important ability score for sorcerers is Charisma, as it's their relevant spellcasting score. And, like wizards, they benefit from high dexterity and constitution scores for survivability reasons. The hit die for the sorcerer is the same as the wizard, a d4. They tend towards having low health. Sorcerers are proficient with all simple weapons, but not with any armor or shield, having the same chance for spell failure as wizards. Sorcerers have 6 class skills, those being Bluff, Concentration, Craft, Knowledge Arcana, Profession, and Spellcraft. They have the same skill point gain as wizards, 2 plus their intelligence modifier, and they start with 4 times that at first level. The base attack bonus and base save of the sorcerer are also the same as the wizard. The base attack, fortitude, and reflex are all poor, and will is good. Now, for the unique properties of sorcerers, and it's time to talk about spells again. A sorcerer's spells are similar to a wizard's in most ways, but there are some key differences. First of all, the ability of a sorcerer to cast spells of specific level is based off charisma rather than intelligence, and what level they gain new spell levels is shifted slightly. They get 2nd level spells at 4th level, and every additional spell level every even level afterwards. So, for a sorcerer to be able to cast 3rd level spells, they must have at least 6 levels in Sorcerer and have a charisma score of at least 13. The bonus spell slots of a sorcerer are also based off of charisma, but other than that are identical to wizards. Sorcerers also have more of each spell slot than wizards do on average. However, now we get to the primary difference between sorcerers and wizards. Sorcerers are spontaneous casters, meaning they don't need to prepare their spells in the morning. If at any point they have an unused spell slot, they can use it to cast any spell they know of the spell slot's level or lower without having to decide what to use in advance. Also, unlike wizards, the number of spells a sorcerer knows is defined by their level, and as such tends to be far lower than the number of spells a wizard knows. Sorcerers start out knowing 4 0th level spells and 2 1st level spells, and gain 1 or more spells per level according to the Sorcerer Spells Known table in the player's handbook. When a sorcerer gains a spell for a level, they can also choose to swap a spell they know of that level for a different spell of that level. So if a sorcerer is gaining a 1st level spell, they can choose to swap out another 1st level spell they know for a different 1st level spell. The only other special property of sorcerers is the familiar, and now that everything else is out of the way, let's talk about familiars. Familiars are magical animal companions that both wizards and sorcerers can obtain starting from 1st level. Familiars are linked to their masters through arcane magic, starting out as normal animals and then becoming bound to their master through a 24-hour ritual. The player's handbook gives 9 different possible types of familiars, with each familiar giving their master a unique bonus. A mage with a bat as a familiar gains a +3 bonus on listen checks. Cat familiars give their masters a +3 bonus to move silently checks. Hawk familiars grant a +3 bonus to spot checks made in bright light. Lizard familiars grant a +3 bonus to climb checks. Owl familiars give their masters a +3 bonus to spot checks made in the dark. Rat familiars grant a +2 to fortitude saves. Raven familiars grant a +3 bonus to appraise checks, and they can speak a language of their master's choice as a special ability. Snake familiars grant a +3 to bluff checks, and finally, Weasel familiars grant a +2 bonus to reflex saves. The familiar is a separate creature from its master, and as such has its own stats. The base stats for each animal can be found in the Monster Manual, which is one of the other standard rulebooks for D&D. I would show you what the Monster Manual looks like in real life, but I don't own one. I'm a poor college student right now, sorry. For effects that are based on hit dice, which are the total number of dice that were rolled to calculate a creature's health, the familiar uses either the master's character level or the creature's normal hit dice, whichever is higher. For hit points, the familiar always has half the hit points of their master rounded down, regardless of their base hit die. Familiars also always use their master's base attack bonus when calculating for attack. Familiars use either their master's base save or the base creature's base save, whichever is higher, although they always use their own ability modifier for saving throws. When a familiar makes a skill roll, you can use the ranks the base creature has or the ranks the master has, whichever is higher, although familiars can only make a few skill rolls. For example, your familiar is likely not capable of making a profession sailor roll to try and steer a fishing trawler. Familiars also have unique special abilities based off of the level of their master, although only levels and classes that grant a familiar count. So if you're multi-classed, only your levels in Wizard or Sorcerer will count towards these special abilities. Familiars have a natural armor bonus equal to half their master's familiar granting class level rounded up, so they have a +1 natural armor bonus at level 1, a +2 at level 3, and so on. This bonus stacks with any natural armor the base creature has. Familiars are also intelligent, with their intelligence starting at 6 at their master's first level and increasing by 1 every odd class level. All familiars grant Alertness at level 1, giving their master a +2 to spot and listen checks when they're within arm's reach. Familiars also have improved Evasion at level 1, meaning that when an attack allows for a reflex save to reduce damage, familiars take no damage on a successful save and half damage on a failed save. Masters can also choose to share spells with their familiar. If their familiar is within 5 feet of them, they can choose to share the bonuses of spells they cast on themselves with their familiar. They can also choose to cast spells with the target of you, which would normally indicate the caster, on their familiar only. If the familiar's master is 3rd level or higher, the familiar can deliver touch spells for them. Basically, some spells require the spellcaster to touch the target of the spell, which is known as a touch spell, and if the familiar and the caster are in contact when the spell is cast, the caster can designate the familiar as the toucher instead. If the familiar's master is 5th level or higher, the familiar gains Speak with Master, meaning that the familiar and the master can now talk verbally, although no other creature understands the conversation without magical assistance. If the familiar's master is 7th level or higher, the familiar gains Speak with Animals of its kind, allowing them to, well, speak with animals of their kind. The kind of conversation they can have is limited by the intelligence score of the recipient, but they can speak to any animals of a similar type to them. If the familiar's master is 11th level or higher, the familiar gains spell resistance equal to the master's level plus 5. If the master is 13th level or higher, they gain Scry on Familiar, allowing them to see and hear their familiar's immediate surroundings as if using the spell Scrying. Hey everyone, Editing Deves here. I need to talk to you about what happens when your familiar dies. If a sorcerer or wizard's familiar dies, they must attempt a DC 15 fortitude saving throw. If this fortitude save is failed, they lose 200 experience points per level, and if they succeed, they lose 100 experience points per level. This can actually drop their character level. Also, they cannot get another familiar for a year and a day. This will also happen if the familiar is dismissed from service by the sorcerer or wizard. Well, with that last bit on familiars, we concluded the video on mages. This was a long and particularly info-heavy episode because of how complicated spellcasters are in D&D, but I think we've covered everything we need to know right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.